You know those tiny little words in English like at, for, or to? They seem so simple, right? But mastering them is actually one of the biggest keys to unlocking truly fluent, natural-sounding English. It's tough, I know, mainly because these little guys often don't translate one-to-one from other languages. But trust me, once you get them right, your communication just clicks. It becomes so much sharper.
Just look at these two sentences. They shouted at the referee. You can feel the aggression there, the anger. But then he glanced at the clock. That's totally neutral, right? It's just a quick look. It's the exact same verb-preposition combo, yet the feeling, the entire meaning, is worlds apart.
So that brings up the big question. How? How can one tiny word completely change the vibe of a sentence like that? Well, that is exactly what we are going to unpack right now.
This whole thing comes down to a concept called collocations. The easiest way to think about them is like words that are, well, they're best friends. They just naturally hang out together. And when it comes to verbs and prepositions, these friendships are often really fixed. It's not always about cold, hard logic. It's more about getting a feel for the combinations that just sound right. So here's the key takeaway. A verb-preposition collocation isn't just some random pairing. No, it's a fundamental building block of the English language. Getting these right is absolutely essential, not just for chatting with friends, but especially if you want your academic or professional writing to be clear and sound, well, professional.
Now, the good news is it's not all just random chaos. While some combinations might seem a little weird, there are definite patterns. And once you start to see these patterns, oh man, everything gets so much easier. So let's start decoding the most common ones.
First up, let's tackle the preposition to. When you see a verb paired up with to, it's usually signaling some kind of direction, a transfer of something, or a response. Think of it as creating a connection or movement from point A to point B.
For example, you listen to your teacher. The sound is directed to you. You respond to feedback. Your action is a direct reaction. You admit to a mistake, which connects you to that mistake, and you refer to an article, pointing your audience in that direction. See the pattern? It's all about that connection.
All right, next let's look at for. This little word is all about the why. It's about purpose. If you're doing something for a reason, if you're making a request or explaining your motivation, for is very often going to be your go-to preposition. You're searching for a solution. That's your goal. You apologized for being late. That's the reason. You're fighting for better conditions. That is your purpose. And you applied for a scholarship. That's the request. It all comes back to the why behind the action.
So what about with? Well, this preposition is all about connection and involvement. And that connection can be a good one, like when you agree with someone, or not so good, like when you argue with them. With is the word you use to show that two or more people or things are involved together. So you can agree with an opinion, that shows unity. Or on the flip side, you could argue with your neighbors, that's conflict. You can be charged with a crime, which associates you directly with that act. And you have to deal with an issue, showing your direct involvement. It really covers the whole spectrum of interaction, doesn't it?
Okay, for our last pattern in this section, we're going to group about and on together. Why? Because both of them are fantastic at introducing a topic. Whenever you want to specify what it is you're talking about, or writing about, or even worrying about, one of these two is almost always the perfect choice. For instance, you might talk about a project, or be worried about the future. About is super common in everyday conversation. Now, on can feel a little more formal, a little more academic. A professor lectured on linguistics. A political analyst will comment on the situation. In both cases, they're just zeroing in on the subject.
Okay, so you've got the basic patterns down. Ready to level up? Because this is where mastering prepositions really gives your English superpowers. We're moving beyond the general rules and into the really subtle, specific ways that one tiny word can completely flip the meaning of a verb on its head.
Now, it's really important to remember that some of these verb-preposition pairs are totally fixed. They're non-negotiable. You always depend on something. A report will always consist of several parts. You just have to learn those as a single unit. But for other verbs, the preposition you choose is everything. It unlocks a whole new meaning.
And this right here is the perfect example. The verb is look every time, but look at is about vision, look for is about searching, and look after means to take care of someone. The verb stays the same, but that one little word after it creates three completely different actions. It's pretty incredible.
So, why does this matter so much? Well, because in any professional or academic situation, precision is king. Using the wrong preposition can make your writing sound a bit off, or even worse, it can make it totally unclear. The best academic writing uses these combinations with what seems like effortless accuracy.
And here are just a few of those high-value power phrases you'll see again and again in formal writing. You'll see things like accounting for variables in an experiment, contributing to a field of study, relying on previous data, and engaging in new research. These are truly the building blocks of sophisticated academic English.
Take a sentence like this one. The research must account for all variables. Here, the phrase account for has nothing to do with money. It means to explain or to justify. Using that specific collocation instantly signals a precise academic meaning that everyone in that field will understand.
Okay, we've gone through the what and the why. Now for the most important part of all, the how. Let's lay out a clear, actionable game plan to help you really, truly master these combinations and make them a natural part of how you speak and write English.
Look, I know the first temptation is to just find a massive list of these pairs and try to memorize them all. And yeah, a little bit of memorization can help, but a more active, smarter approach is way more effective. It's about building an intuition, a real feel for how these words dance together.
So here is a simple 3-step strategy. First, for those fixed pairs like depend on, just treat them as a single vocabulary word. Learn them as a chunk. Second, become a detective. When you're reading or listening to English, actively notice how a verb like look or think completely changes its meaning when the preposition changes. And third, and this is the most important one, you have to use them. Actually try to build your own sentences. The more you practice, the more natural it's all going to feel.
And that's your roadmap to fluency. So to get you started on that journey, I'm going to leave you with one question to think about. What's the one verb preposition pair that always gives you trouble? Because just identifying it, well, that's the first step to finally mastering it.